All right, greetings, good afternoon. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm coming through live in effect. So today's topic will be dealing about the story of Mike Brown. So on this particular day, on the 9th of August in 2014, a young African American male was coming out the corner store in Ferguson, Missouri, and he happened to come across a white police officer. Someone called the cops on him. The white police officer killed this young man. So, peace, 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 peace. And if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and do so. If you are watching from Facebook, you can go ahead and share this video. So let's get into the story about Mike Brown. All right. So this is Mike Brown right here. This is this young man who was murdered. He had just graduated from high school. So as you can see, that was his high school picture. And let's look at the story of how all of this went down. All right. So here's the story. It's called Shooting of Mike Brown. Now, he was killed by a white officer named Darren Wilson. Okay. It says on August the 9th of 2014, Michael Brown Jr., an 18-year-old black man, was fatally shot by a 28-year-old white Ferguson police officer, Darren Wilson, in the city of Ferguson, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis. Brown was accompanied by his 22-year-old friend, Dorian Johnson. Wilson said that an altercation ensued when Brown attacked Wilson in his police vehicle for control of Wilson's gun until it was fired. Johnson claimed that Wilson initiated a confrontation by grabbing Brown by the neck through his car window, throwing him, and then shooting at him. At this point, both Wilson and Johnson state that Brown and Johnson fled, with Wilson pursuing Brown shortly thereafter. Wilson stated that Brown stopped and charged him after a short pursuit. Johnson contradicted this account, stating that Brown turned around with his hands raised after Wilson shot his back. According to Johnson, Wilson then shot Brown multiple times until Brown fell to the ground. In the entire altercation, Wilson fired a total of 12 bullets, including twice during the struggle in the car. The last was probably the fatal shot. Brown was struck 6 times, all in the front of his body. This event ignited unrest in Ferguson. Subsequent FBI investigation found that there was no evidence that Brown had his hands up in surrendering or said don't shoot before he was shot. However, protesters claimed that he had done so and later used the slogan "Hands up, don't shoot." Protests, both peaceful and violent, continued for more than a week in Ferguson. Police later established a nightly curfew. The response of area police agency in dealing with the protests was strongly criticized by both the media and politicians. Concerns were raised over insensitivity tactics and militarized response. Missouri Governor Jay Nixon ordered local police organizations to cede much of their authority to the Missouri State Highway Patrol. A grand jury was called and given extensive evidence from Robert McCullough, the St. Louis County prosecutor, on November 24th of 2014. McCullough announced the St. Louis County grand jury had decided not to indict Wilson. In March of 2015, the U.S. Department of Justice reported the conclusion of its own investigation and cleared Wilson of civil rights violation in the shooting. It found forensic evidence supported Wilson's accounts and that witnesses who corroborate the officer's account were credible. Witnesses who had incriminated him were found to be not credible, with some admitting that they had not directly seen the events. The U.S. Department of Justice concluded that Wilson shot Brown in self-defense. And it says a New St. Louis prosecutor, Wesley Bell, spent 5 months in 2020 reviewing the case with an eye to charging Wilson with either manslaughter or murder. In July, Bell announced he would not charge Wilson in any crime. So once again, that's Mike Brown. So check this out. Until this day, there's still no justice for this young man. His family has not received any justice at all. So therefore, they take on the side of the police without enough evidence proving that this young man indeed supposedly attacked the police officer. And supposedly tried to harm this man, whatever. You know, if you guys don't know about now, there's a blue code. And I'm going to go into what the blue code is, but let me go ahead and continue with this article. That's Mike Brown. Okay, so let's get a little backstory of who Mike Brown is. So Mike O.D. Brown Jr., all right, he was born May 20th, 1996, died on August 9th, graduated from Normandy High School in St. Louis County 8 days before his death, completing an alternative education program. At the time of his death, he was 18 years old, 6'4", okay, and weighed 292 pounds. He was an amateur rap musician who posted his songs on the popular music sharing site SoundCloud under the handle Big Mike. He was 2 days from starting a technical program for heating and air conditioning repair at Veterac College Technical School. And who in the fuck was Darren Wilson? Darren Dean Wilson. He was born on 1986 on May 14th, Fort Worth, Texas. He was 6'4". He was 6'4" tall and weighed about 210 pounds. Okay. Wilson's first job was in the town of Jenny, Missouri, where he began working in 2009. With respect to his job, Wilson said to the New York in 2015, "I'll never be in the area where there was that much poverty." The police force in Jenny was shut down by the town's council, by the city council in 2011 or March. In October 2011, Wilson began working for the Ferguson Police Department. In February 2013, Wilson won a commendation from the Ferguson Police Department after he apprehended a suspect who was later charged with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute and resisting arrest. So he was made a superhero because he apprehended someone who had marijuana, a possession of marijuana, a drug that's not even really hardcore, a drug that has not really killed any innocent people, a drug that doesn't really does any type of damage, a collateral damage at that. But he apprehended them. I mean, I could see that if he sold marijuana to a child, that's different because a child's brain is not developed enough to take all of that. But if it's somebody that's an adult and you sell marijuana to them and you incarcerate them, you know, I wonder what the sentence was. I wonder if this man got, I wonder what did the man get? But that's not even here and there. It's about the fact that Wilson was looked at as a hero. Don't you just love this system? Don't you love it? Okay. So it says surveillance video was publicly released in the 2017 documentary film Stranger Fruit. Shows Mike Brown walking into a Ferguson market and liquor at 1:13 a.m. Right, 10.5 hours before he entered the store for the final time. The footage shows Brown handling a young clerk at a brown package believed by the filmmaker to be marijuana, and then receiving an unpurchased package of cigarettos from the store. After the video was rediscovered and made in public in 2017, some, including Brown's family, said they believe Brown had left the package there for safekeeping and later returned to retrieve it. The store owner disputed this through an attorney who dismissed claims that the store traded him cigarettos for pots. The lawyer claimed the reason Brown, gave it back is he was walking out the door with unpaid merchandise and the staff, wanted it back. The store's attorney said the video had been in the hands of Brown's family and law enforcement since the initial investigation, and said the video had been edited to remove the portion where the store clerk returns Brown's package to him. Following this, and on March 13, 2017, an unedited footage from the store was released by the St. Louis County prosecutor to try to settle questions. So it was said to be that Mike Brown supposedly gave the marijuana to a store clerk in exchange for a cigaretto. But then turned around and said the store clerk wanted the cigaretto back and gave the bag back to Mike Brown. Well, let's see what else happens here. Okay. Incident 11:47 a.m. Wilson responded to a call about a baby with breathing problems and drove to Glenart Drive, Canfield Drive. About 3 minutes later, and several blocks away, Brown was recorded on camera stealing a box of Swisher Sweets cigars and forcefully shoved a Ferguson market clerk. Brown and his friend Dorian Johnson left the market about 11:54 a.m. At 11:53, a police dispatcher reported stealing in progress at the Ferguson market and described the suspect as a black man wearing a white t-shirt running towards Quick Trip. The suspect was reported as having stolen a box of Swisher cigarette. It was 57. It was at 11:57. The dispatch described the suspect as wearing a red St. Louis Cardinals hat, a white t-shirt, yellow socks, khaki shorts, and that he was accompanied by another male. At 12 p.m., Wilson reported he was back in service and radio units 25 and 22 to ask if they needed his assistance in searching for the suspects. 7 seconds later, an unidentified officer said the suspect had disappeared. Wilson called for backup at 12:02, saying, Unit 21, put me on the Canfield with 2 and send me another car. All right, so here are the police officers right here. Darren Wilson ain't on this picture, but here they are. This is right here in St. Louis County. And then it goes on to say initial reports of what happened next differ widely among sources and witnesses, particularly with regard to whether Brown was moving towards Wilson when the fire was shot. When the shots were fired. At noon on August 9th, Wilson drove up to Brown and Johnson as they were walking in the middle of Canfield Drive and ordered them to move off the street. Wilson continued driving past the two men, but then backed up and stopped close to them. A struggle took place between Brown and Wilson after Brown reached through the window of the police SUV a Chevrolet Tahoe. Wilson was armed with a SIG-229 pistol, which was fired twice during the struggle from inside the vehicle, with one bullet hitting Brown's right hand. The Brown and Johnson fled, and Johnson hid behind a car. Wilson got out of the vehicle and pursued Brown. At some point, Wilson fired his gun again while facing Brown and hit him with at least 6 shots, all in the front of his body. Brown was unarmed and died on the street. Less than 90 seconds passed from the time Wilson encountered Brown to the time of Brown's death. so basically they saying that he approached Wilson, a police patrol car, and tried to manhandle him. This is what the article is saying. And that's why Darren Wilson pulled the gun out and shot him. Now, I really don't believe that story. I don't believe it. I don't believe anybody would just walk up to the police car like that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's very rare that it happens, because typically, as Black people, not too many of us would even want to look the way of the police officer. Not too many of us want to be bothered or counter issues with the cops. We try to avoid them as much as possible. So I really don't believe that this is what happened. But again, this is what's written in this article. So let's go ahead and read some more information. An unidentified officer arrived on the scene in 72 seconds after Wilson called as where the second suspect was. 31 seconds later, a supervisor was requested by Unit 25 at 12:07. An officer on the scene radioed to dispatch for more units. Also, 12:07, the St. Louis County Police were notified, and county officers began arriving on the scene around 12:15 p.m. The St. Louis County detectives were notified at 12:43 p.m. and arrived about 1:30 p.m., with the forensics investigator arriving at about 2:30 p.m. And it says police dispatched a dozen units to scene by 1 p.m. with another dozen, including 2 cannon units. By 2 p.m. Gunshots were recorded in Ferguson police logs at 2:11 p.m. and by the ambulance dispatch again at 2:14 p.m., which led to the response of 20 units from 8 different municipal forces in the next 20 minutes. As the situation deteriorated, the police commanders had investigators seek cover, and detectives assisted in crowd control. At 2:45, 4 cannon units arrived on the scene, and the SWAT team arrived at 3:20 p.m. The medical examiner began his examination around 3:30 p.m. and concluded about half an hour later, with the body being cleared to be taken to the morgue. At 4:37 p.m., Brown's body was assigned by the workers at the morgue or the morgue. So I guess basically, Mike Brown was shot 6 times. Okay, and then units after units after units came, and then finally someone removed his body, taking it to the mortician, I assume. But this is interesting. And the reason why I say I can't really fully believe the story, because it's the same old storyline that we hear over and over again. It's the same old storyline that we hear over and over again. And it makes you become skeptical. Now let's go down where it says let's go down to 2020 new prosecutor. So 2020 new prosecutor. A new prosecutor, a new St. Louis prosecutor, uh, Wesley Bell, spent 5 months in 2020 secretly reviewing the case with an eye to charging Wilson with either manslaughter or murder. In July, Bell announced he would not charge Wilson with any crime. Bell said he didn't have enough evidence to ethnically bring a charge against Darren Wilson. So he said there was a lack of evidence to prove that Darren Wilson was indeed guilty. Okay, so now here's another article from MSN, right? .com. And the name of the article is called "Since Michael Brown's Fatal Shooting in Ferguson, Race Relation and Trust in Police Has Only Gotten Worse." It absolutely have. It says Sunday marks the 6th-year anniversary of Mike Brown's shooting death in Ferguson, Missouri. Yet the incident, a number of polls show that race relation and Americans' trust in police have further deteriorated. Of course it has. All right. Now, and then it goes on to say right here, in a recent poll conducted this year, also by NPR/PBS NewsHour, Morris, from June 2nd to June 3rd, about 35% of respondents said they had great confidence in the police when it comes to treating blacks and whites equally. A drop of 6% points from a 2014 survey that asked the same question. The latest studies also found an increase in those who said they have very little confidence in policing, with 18% saying so in 2020 compared to 16% in 2014. Said Dr. Michael Lindsley of New York's University Met-Silver Institution for Poverty Policy and Research. Black communities are often over-policed and over-profiled, which can even lead to fatality, as recent cases have shown us. Will an interaction with the police result in an outcome characterized by physical harm or unequal treatment by the court system? That is a real concern for African Americans. And let me stop right there. Indeed, this is a fact. I can tell you that for myself, because if you walk into most inner city neighborhood, right, you will notice that the police is riding up and down the block a lot in the inner city communities. And it seems like it's black people, we are over policed the most. So what does that say? What does that say about us when we have police officers actually watching us 24/7? Like we're under surveillance. What does that say? That means that in this country, we are seen as threats, as menaces, as criminals. Because you don't really find this going on in the suburbs, and I've been in the suburbs, okay? And you don't find this kind of shit going on and happening in the suburbs. You don't see too many police officers riding up and down the street in the suburbs. Because the majority of the people that lives in those communities are either Caucasian and Asian people. You got a small few percentage of black people that live in the suburban area, but for the most part, it's Caucasian community. So in the back of their mind, they feel like they ain't got much to worry about when it comes to the Caucasian folks, right? But when it comes to us, that make up the largest percentage of people that lives in the inner city, that lives in the hood in particularly, then it becomes an issue of, okay, are these people more than likely commit crime? Are these people are going to more than likely sell drugs? So it's like a close surveillance watch on us. And where I live in the inner city, okay? I live in the hood. And I'll be honest with you, there'll be time from time that the police come ride through here where I live and just be sitting. Hell, I done even seen SWAT cars, okay, come up in here. So what does that say? What does that say? What does it say to everybody else about us? That we're uncivilized, we are the most criminal, we are the most savage. And this is how we feel about each other as black folks, that we are savages and criminals. Now, I will say this, there are those who do commit criminal activities, okay, in our community. That is a fact. But when it comes to the overall general population, the way that we are being depleted, the way we are being displayed on news, and just overall, we're being marginalized to the level of criminality, especially the African American male. Okay, so let's look at the polls. Two separate polls conducted by Gallup in 2014 and 2020 found similar results to black Americans. Confidence about police decreasing over the past 6 years. In Gallup's 2014 poll, 37% of black Americans said they had a great deal, quite a lot of confidence in police. But a poll from 2020 report that only about 18% of black Americans said they were very confident when it comes to being treated with courtesy and respect by police. And you know why? Only 18% that say that because most of us can't trust the cops anymore. Most of us are scared to call the cops. We scared to call the police. You see what happened to the young lady out in Fort Worth, Texas, the young lady in Louisville, Kentucky, or that young man in Fort Worth, Texas, in his apartment where the police officer walked in and shot him. George Floyd, another young man at Wendy's. As a matter of fact, I seen a video where a brother had to approach the sister that was in the van or in the truck. She looked like she was asleep because the police was across the street. He had to tell her, like, hey, you need to move your car up. You need to move your car. You sleeping in the drive-through. You need to move it up because otherwise the police gonna come up in here and say something. And if the police do say something, they're gonna end up doing something. We don't want to lose another black person. Now that's sad. That's sad that you really have to keep a close eye on what you're doing, especially when you're in the presence of the police. You better keep a very, 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 very close eye. Hmm. It says when factoring in those who are at least somewhat confident that the police would treat them well, a majority of black Americans, 61%, are generally confident. But this is still below the 85% seen nationality, including 91% of white American. Gallup wrote about the recent poll. Hmm. Gallup has been surveying Americans on the topic of race relation and racial issues since 2001. According to Gallup's tracking, the number of Americans who said they are very satisfied with the state of race relation decreased from 10% in 2014 to 7% in 2020. Mm. So as you can see, things done change over a period of time. So now, the more increase of the police brutality going on, it has caused us to have a different attitude towards the law enforcement. Now, let's look at what is the blue code. Let's talk about the blue code real quick. Give me a second. All right, so blue wall of silence. That's what the blue code is. Is blue wall of silence. The blue wall of silence, also blue code and blue shield, are terms used in the United States to denote the informal code of silence among police officers not to report on a colleague's error, misconduct, or crime, including police brutality. If questioned about an incident of alleged misconduct involving another officer during the course of an official inquiry, while following the code, the officer being questioned would perjure themselves by what's it fighting ignorance of another officer's wrongdoing. Now here it is, police corruption. The code is considered to be an example of police corruption and misconduct. Officers who engage in discriminatory arrests, physical or verbal harassment, and selective enforcement of the law may be considered to be corrupt. Many officers who follow the code may participate in some of these acts during their career for personal matters or in order to protect or support fellow officers. All of these are considered illegal offenses and are ground for suspension or immediate dismissal. Officers who follow the code are unable to report fellow officers who participate in corruption due to the unwritten laws of their police family. Police perjury, or testifying in the United States police slang, is when an officer gives false testimony in court. Officers who do not lie in court may sometimes be threatened and ostracized by fellow police officers. In 1992, the Commission to Investigate Allegation of Police Corruption, also known as the Marlin Commission, undertook a 2-year investigation on perjury in law enforcement. They discovered that some officers falsified documents such as arrest reports, warrants, and evidence to provide cover for an illegal arrest or search. Some police officers also fabricate stories when testifying before a jury. The commissions found that the officers were not lying for greed, but because they believed that they were imprisoning people who deserve it. Many prosecutors allow police perjury to occur as well. Now, do you see how they go hand in hand? That goes hand in hand. So that usually happen, and a lot of people don't know, or a lot of people are not aware that this blue code takes place. So another police officer can witness what's going on or what the incident, but they will falsify the information just so they can protect their job. And not only that, they won't have to worry about receiving threats from other officers. There has been numerous account of story where former officers lost their jobs due to the fact that they had confessed and told on their colleague for um their wrongdoings, while they were on the job. It has happened. So many of them feel like in order to protect their interests, they will not tell on another officer. They will not report anything. They will keep it to themselves. Now let's check it out what it says laws. Under here real quick. It says many police departments have their own official code of conduct. They train new recruits and investigated police officers if they have a complaint from a civilian or an alleged criminal. There are also some states laws put in place to help protect civilian and criminals from corrupt officers. If the officer is found guilty, officers can be sued by the victim for damage caused by police brutality, false arrest, and imprisonment, malicious prosecution, and wrongful death. Federal laws strongly prohibit officer misconduct, including officers who follow the code by testifying or failing to report any officer who is participating in corruption. If an officer is in violation of any of the officer misconduct federal laws, only the federal government can issue a suit. The police department is only responsible for preventing corruption among officers. If an officer is convicted, they may be forced to pay high fines or be in prison. To be convicted, the plaintiffs must prove that the officer was following the code or participating in the negligence and unlawful conduct. It is often hard to convict an officer of following the code or other forms of corruption because officers are protected by defense of immunity, which is an exemption from penalties and burdens that the law generally places on private citizens. The U.S. Supreme Court has consistently held that officers be given the benefit of the doubt that they act lawfully in fulfilling their duties, a position reaffirmed in Saucier versus Katz. All right, and let's take a look at that real quick. Advertisement for you. Okay, so this case was a United States Supreme Court case in which the court was considered the qualified immunity of a police officer to a civil rights case brought through a Bivens action. Okay, so let's look at the backstory of this. All right. So here's the backstory. In 1994, Presidio Army Base in San Francisco, California, was the site of an event to celebrate conversion of the base to a national park. Alec Katz, the president of a group called In Defense of Animals, brought with him a cloth banner approximately 4 by 3 feet that read, "Please keep animal torture out of our national park," to voice opposition to the possibility that the Letterman Army Hospital might be used for experiments on animals. All right. And it says, while Vice President Al Gore Jr. began giving a speech, Katz removed the banner from his jacket, started to unfold it, and walked towards the fence and speaker's platform. Petitioner David Saucier, a military police officer on duty that they had been warned by his supervisor of the possibility of demonstration, and respondent had been identified as a potential protester. Okay. And so, as Katz reached the barrier and began placing the banner on the other side, the officers grabbed respondent from behind, took the banner, and rushed him off the area. Saucier and Parker responded to a nearby military event where respondent claims he was shoved or thrown inside. Katz brought an action in the United States District Court for Northern District of California against petitioner and other officer pursuant to Bevan versus 6 unknown names agents alleging that the defendants have violated his Fourth Amendment rights by using excessive force to arrest him. And then the Fourth Amendment is prohibiting unreasonable searches and seizure. So here it is, the Supreme Court decision. All right, the Supreme Court held that qualified immunity analysts must proceed in two-step. A court must first ask whether the facts alleged shows the officer's conduct violated a constitutional right. Then, if a constitutional right was violated, the court will go on to determine whether the constitutional right was clearly established. And it says in this 2009 decision in Pearson versus Callum, the Supreme Court modified the two-step immunity analysis or analyst imposed in Saussure to make its application less restrictive. Saussure required courts to confirm the first prong of the analysis before they move on to the second. But Pearson say the Saussure's protocol should not be regarded as mandatory in all cases. So Pearson goes on to say, our decision does not prevent the lower courts from following the Saussure procedure. It simply recognizes that those courts should have the discretion to decide whether that procedure is worthwhile in a particular case. All right. So if a police officer manhandles an individual, right, and the individual sues the police officer, they have to be able to actually prove that they were violated and manhandled, and their constitutional right was not regarded. So in this case, the gentleman had the right to what they call freedom of assembly, and the Fourth Amendment said that you don't have the right to do like illegal arrest and without proper search and all that other stuff, etc. But so they went to court about it, and what the Supreme Court said, okay, if he can prove that this person has violated their rights per se, then that could be overturned based on a decision of the Supreme Court. But if the Supreme Court feel like the right has not been violated, then the case is done, is over with, and it's thrown out the window. So anyways, yeah, that's the information about Mike Brown and the Blue Code, which is also known as Blue Walls of Silence. So with that being said, may Mike Brown rest in peace, and may many others who have been a victim of police brutality do the same. So you all have a wonderful day. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching. And with that being said, I will talk to you guys later. All right, then. Take it easy. Peace and power and elevation be to all of you. Thank you so much. All right.